You're coming with me now.
The courtroom was supposed to be silent, but silence has a sound. A low hum of judgment, 1,000 eyes pressing down on one black woman standing alone before the law. She wasn't a criminal. She wasn't dangerous. Yet the way the officers flanked her, you'd think she was a threat to the entire city. Then it happened. The slap. Open palm, sharp, loud. It cracked across her face like a gunshot, echoing against the marble walls. The gallery gasped. Someone dropped a pen. Even the judge froze for a second before pretending not to notice. Her cheek burned, her eyes watered. Not from pain, but from the humiliation. Her children were watching. Her community was watching. And the men who swore to protect and serve had just tried to break her in the one place where justice was supposed to live. She straightened her back, lifted her chin, and behind her swollen cheek, a fire began to rise. Because what no one in that courtroom knew, what not even the judge could imagine, in just a matter of moments, this very woman would take the judge's seat. Her name was Naomi Carter. To most of the city, she was invisible, just another black woman trying to survive. But to her children, she was the world. Naomi lived in a small 2-bedroom apartment on the east side of town, where the paint peeled. From the walls and the hum of traffic never stopped. Every morning she rose before dawn, packing lunch for her daughter Maya and her son Jordan, making sure their uniforms were pressed, their shoes clean, even if hers were falling apart. The smell of burnt toast mixed with the faint perfume she dabbed on her wrists, cheap but dignified. She wanted her children to believe they belonged anywhere, even in places where whispers would say otherwise. At work, Naomi was a paralegal in a downtown law firm. She was sharp, faster than most of the junior attorneys, but no one ever let her. Forget the color of her skin. "Coffee, Naomi," one of the partners barked one morning, tossing an empty cup on her desk. She clenched her jaw. She wasn't a secretary, but saying that out loud might cost her the job that kept food on her table. So she swallowed the bitterness every single day. At lunch, when the firm's lawyers gathered in glass-walled conference rooms, she ate alone in the break room. She overheard whispers, "She's smart, but you know how clients are. They won't be comfortable." Mini cliffhanger. One day, she stayed late, finishing documents. She spotted a case file deliberately altered, evidence tampered with. Her gut tightened. She knew what she saw, but the partner walking past her desk gave her a smile that was more warning than kindness. She shut the file quickly. She knew better than to speak. At least for now, outside of work, Naomi faced the same coldness. At the grocery store, clerks followed her down the aisles. At PTA meetings, other mothers avoided her eyes. Even her children noticed. "Mom," Maya whispered one night, "why do people look at us like we don't belong?" Naomi brushed her daughters, curls back and forced a smile. "Because they don't see what I see. They don't see how brilliant you are." Inside, her heart broke. But she promised herself her kids would never carry the shame that was forced on her. Not everyone turned away. There was David, a young black defense attorney who'd noticed Naomi's sharp mind when she quietly corrected his paperwork one afternoon. "Yuki, ever thought about law school?" he asked. Naomi laughed bitterly. "Single mother, no money, no time. Who'd let me in?" But David didn't laugh. "They'd be lucky to have you." And there was Miss Eleanor, an elderly community activist who lived in Naomi's building. Every Friday night, she'd sit on the stoop with a notebook filled with names, people in the neighborhood who'd been harassed, jailed, beaten by police. "They think we don't keep records," Eleanor told Naomi, her voice raspy. "But one day, we'll have our day in court, and we'll need people like you." Naomi didn't believe her at first. She didn't see herself as powerful. She just wanted to survive. But fate was already moving. It started with a traffic stop. Naomi was driving home after picking up her kids from school. A siren wailed. Red and blue lights flashed. 2 officers approached, faces hard, hands already on their belts. "License and registration." She handed them over, steady but nervous. Minutes dragged. Then one officer leaned down. "Step out of the vehicle, Herbie." Children's eyes widened. "Mom, what's happening?" Jordan whispered. Naomi stepped out, trying to stay calm. "What did I do?" she asked. The officer smirked. "You fit a description." A description. That phrase she'd heard 1,000 times in news reports about black men and women dragged away for nothing. They searched her car, tossed her purse on the ground, laughed when they found nothing. Then one of them whispered, "Next time, keep your mouth shut and your head down." They let her go with no ticket and no explanation, but the humiliation sank deep. And it wasn't the last time. Naomi's anger grew. Late at night, after the kids slept, she began writing. Page after page of what she saw. Workplace bias, police, harassment, community stories Miss Eleanor shared. One night, David stopped by and saw the stacks of notes. "You're building a case," he said quietly. Naomi shook her head. "I'm just writing so I don't explode." But David leaned closer. "No, this is evidence. And one day, we're going to use it." Mini cliffhanger. Naomi hides the notes when she hears footsteps outside her door. A shadow lingers at her peephole, then disappears. Someone knew she was watching. Her mother, who had lived through segregation, begged her to stop. "Baby, they will destroy you if you fight them. Just keep your head down." But Naomi looked at her children, at their young, unbroken faces. "I can't let them grow up believing we're less than anyone else." The final push came when a neighbor's teenage son, bright, athletic, never in trouble, was arrested for stealing from a store. Except Naomi had been there. She'd seen him pay. She ran to the station and demanded answers, but instead of listening, the officers shoved her back. One whispered, "You really want to make trouble, don't you?" That night, she cried until her throat was raw. But through the tears, she felt something shift. No more silence, no more bowing her head. She wasn't just going to survive anymore, she was going to fight, and the fight would take her straight into the courtroom. Naomi didn't become a fighter overnight. At first, it was whispers. Quiet meetings in Eleanor's dimly lit apartment, the smell of peppermint tea mixing with the dust of old case files stacked high. David spread papers across the table. Police, reports, witness statements, photographs. "All of this," he said, tapping the stack, "shows a pattern. Wrongful arrests, excessive force, fabricated evidence." Naomi's hands trembled as she leafed through the documents. She recognized faces, neighbors, co-workers, even church members, all chewed up by the system. "And the courts let it happen?" she whispered. David met her eyes. "Because nobody challenges them. Until now." Night after night, Naomi and David worked after her kids were asleep. Maya would peek through the bedroom door sometimes, watching her mother scribble notes by the glow of a desk lamp. "Mom, why are you always writing?" she asked once. Naomi smiled faintly. "Because one day, baby, these words might change everything." But Naomi wasn't fearless. Some nights she collapsed into tears. "What if they come after my children?" she confessed to Eleanor. The older woman gripped her hand with surprising strength. "They already came for us long ago. You either bow or you rise." Mini cliffhanger. A knock rattled Naomi's door one midnight. When she opened it, no one was there. Just a thin envelope on the floor. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "Drop it, or lose everything." Instead of breaking her, the threat hardened Naomi's resolve. They decided to start small. David suggested gathering community testimonies. If the system ignores one voice, we'll give them 100. So Naomi went door to door, notebook in hand. She listened to mothers who'd lost sons, men beaten during routine stops, and children traumatized by raids. Each story fueled her anger and her courage. By the time she filled the 10th notebook, she no longer saw herself as powerless. Still, fear lingered. One evening, as she walked home, headlights flared behind her. A car crept slowly down the block, following her steps. Her pulse raced. She clutched her bag tight. Then the engine roared, and the car sped past. But Naomi knew. They were watching. Not everyone in the community believed in her fight. One man, Thomas, a local shopkeeper, warned her bluntly, "You're going to make things worse. The cops protect this neighborhood. Without them, we're finished." Naomi shook her head. "They don't protect us, Thomas. They control us." He narrowed his eyes. "You're going to regret this." Mini cliffhanger. A week later, Naomi learned that confidential notes she'd shared in a private meeting had somehow reached the police department. Someone had leaked. But who? The pressure mounted. One night, Naomi broke down in front of David. "They're too powerful. Judges, prosecutors, and police are all tied together. Who's going to believe me over them?" David leaned forward. "Naomi, do you know what you did tonight?" She shook her head. "You stood up in a room full of people who'd given up long ago, and you gave them hope." Her tears slowed. Hope. The one thing she couldn't let her children lose was her patience. The turning point came with a phone call. It was Miss Eleanor, voice trembling. "They've arrested Jamal." Jamal was a 19-year-old whom Naomi had tutored in writing. Bright, respectful, never in trouble. "What for?" Naomi demanded. "Resisting arrest," Eleanor spat. "Translation. He asked them why they were harassing him." Naomi felt the rage rise like fire. "This has to end," she whispered. David moved fast. He pulled every record he could find. Patterns emerged. Same officers, same excuses, same outcomes, and Naomi discovered something shocking. The police reports were filled with inconsistencies, dates that didn't match, witnesses who didn't exist, signatures forged. "This is it," David said, slamming a folder shut. "This isn't just misconduct. This is corruption." Naomi stared at the evidence, heart pounding. But the more they uncovered, the more dangerous it became. Mini cliffhanger. One night, as Naomi returned home, she found her apartment door slightly open. Inside, drawers were overturned, notebooks gone. Someone had broken in. She sank to the floor, shaking. Everything she'd built, stolen. But then she saw something they'd missed. A single notebook wedged under the couch. Inside was the story of the boy arrested for stealing, though Naomi had witnessed him pay. The very case that had broken her silence. Her hand tightened around the notebook. "They can take everything else," she whispered, "but they won't take the truth." Naomi and David decided to bring the case to the public. Not in whispers, not in secret, but in court. "We'll force them to face it," David said. Naomi hesitated. "What if they destroy me?" He held her gaze. "Then you'll become the proof they can't bury." The days before the trial were tense. Naomi felt eyes on her everywhere. Cars are slowing near her building, anonymous calls with heavy breathing. Her children sensed it too. "Mom, are we safe?" Maya asked one night. Naomi kissed her forehead. "As long as I'm breathing, you're safe." But when she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. Tired eyes, bruised spirit. Still, behind it all burned something more substantial than fear. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for every voice silenced in the shadows. The morning of the court arrived. Naomi walked through the courthouse doors. Head high, though her knees trembled. Reporters whispered. Lawyers smirked. Officers stared with thinly veiled contempt. And then, just as the judge entered, one of the officers shoved her forward and hissed, "Keep running your mouth, and you'll—" "Wish we only slapped you." Naomi froze, her cheek still stinging from that earlier blow. But deep inside, a voice rose louder than fear. Not today. Not ever again. Because today, she was done bowing, and soon the entire courtroom would learn what happens when the silenced finally speak. The courtroom smelled of varnished wood and stale coffee. Reporters lined the benches, pens ready. The gallery buzzed. Neighbors, activists, even strangers who'd heard whispers of the case. Naomi stood at the defense table, her palms damp against the worn oak surface. Beside her, David stacked files like weapons. Across the room, the prosecutor smirked. The officers leaned back in their seats, arms crossed, confident. The judge entered. "Order in the court." The gavel struck like thunder. It started small. "A," whispered insult from one of the officers as Naomi walked past. She ignored it. Then another hissed louder, "You don't belong here!" And before anyone could stop it, the officer slapped her, open-handed, hard. The sound cracked through the chamber. Gasps, shouts, reporters scrambling for cameras. Naomi staggered, her cheek flaming red. The judge banged his gavel. "Order! Order!" But no one listened. The courtroom was alive with shock. Naomi straightened slowly. Her eyes burned, but not with tears. With fire. "This," she said, her voice trembling but loud, "is what justice looks like in this city. A black woman struck in the very place where truth is supposed to live." The gallery erupted. Cheers, anger, voices demanding answers. David rose, slamming a folder onto the table. "Your Honor, we move to enter new evidence into the record." The prosecutor sneered. "On what grounds?" "On the grounds," David shot back, "that the officers who claim to serve justice have built their careers on lies." He flung the folder open. Inside, dozens of pages, reports with forged signatures, photos of bruises, names of witnesses who never existed. The judge hesitated. "This is highly irregular." Naomi stepped forward. "No, Your Honor. What's irregular is a system that lets men like this destroy families while we're told to stay silent." Her voice carried. Even the reporters stopped scribbling, eyes locked on her. Then, another voice cut through the room. "I can confirm what she's saying." Every head turned. A man stood near the back, uniform wrinkled, hands shaking. An officer. His name was Officer Daniels. For years, he'd been part of the machine, but now his face was pale with guilt. "They made us change reports," he confessed. "They told us to target certain neighborhoods, to make the numbers look good." The courtroom gasped. The prosecutor shouted, "Objection!" But Daniel's voice grew stronger. "They told us to keep people like her in their place." He pointed at Naomi, and silence fell. The officers at the table leapt to their feet, shouting. The judge pounded his gavel, veins bulging. "Order! I will have order in my courtroom!" But it was too late. The truth was loose. David raised another stack of files. "Your Honor, this isn't just testimony. This is proof. Years of misconduct, cover-ups, fabrications, and now the people deserve to see it." He turned, handing the files directly to the reporters. Flashbulbs exploded. Pages flew. The officers shouted. One lunged toward Naomi, but the bailiffs, sensing the shift of power, held him back. The judge, sweating, tried to regain control. "This court will recess," but Naomi's voice cut through him like a blade. "No, Your Honor. This court will finally hear the truth." Gasps rippled again. No one spoke to a judge like that. Naomi stepped toward the bench, her every step fueled by years of humiliation, by every door slammed in her face, by every whisper that she wasn't enough. "You told me to bow my head. You told me to accept the slap. But today the people are watching, and we will not bow anymore. The judge's gavel slipped from his hand. Then, chaos. The gallery surged, reporters shouted, the officers cursed. The judge rose, pale and shaken, and for the first time, he backed away. He left the bench. Silence swept the room. Naomi looked at the empty chair, the judge's seat. Her cheeks still throbbed. Her knees trembled, but something pulled her forward. She walked up the steps. Slowly, every eye followed her. She placed her hand on the gavel. The wood was heavy, cool against her skin. And then, she sat. Not as a defendant, not as a victim, but as the judge. The room held its breath. Naomi raised the gavel, and when it struck the bench, it wasn't thunder. It was freedom. Reporters screamed. Questions. People cheered, wept, and clapped. David stared at her in awe. Even Officer Daniels lowered his head as if absolved by her courage. Naomi's voice rang out. This courtroom does not belong to liars. It does not belong to oppressors. It belongs to the people. And today, the people have spoken. The gallery roared, and in that instant, Naomi Carter, the woman they tried to silence, became the symbol of justice they could never erase. The gavel's echo still rang when uniformed officers burst into the chamber, not to protect their colleagues, but to escort them out. The corrupt officers shouted, cursed, and fought against the hands gripping their arms. But this time, no one feared them. This time, the people saw them for what they were. Reporters swarmed, cameras flashing, microphones thrust forward. Is this the end of the scandal? Who will answer for the years of lies? The prosecutor, pale and sweating, tried to slip away, unnoticed. But David's voice cut through the noise. You will answer, too. Every case you built on fabricated evidence will be reopened. The gallery cheered. Naomi remained seated on the bench, the gavel still in her hand. She could feel the weight of it, not wood, not symbol, but history itself pressing into her palm. The judge who had fled minutes earlier was nowhere to be seen. Later, the news would report his resignation, his connections to the corrupt officers, exposed. But in that moment, Naomi wasn't thinking of him. She was thinking of Maya and Jordan, watching from the gallery with wide, astonished eyes. Her children had seen their mother humiliated. Now, they were watching her rise. That night, the story spread like wildfire. Headlines blazed across every screen. Black woman turns tables in courtroom. Corruption exposed in shocking trial. Talk shows debated it. Communities cheered it. For the first time in years, people believed justice could be reclaimed. Within weeks, the fallout was immense. The officers were suspended, and investigations were launched into their records. The prosecutor faced disciplinary review, and the city, under public pressure, began appointing an independent committee to oversee cases. But the most unexpected change came when the state announced something unprecedented. Naomi Carter would be sworn in as a judge, filling the very seat that had once looked down on her. The day of her swearing in, the courthouse steps overflowed with people. Eleanor stood in front, clutching a bouquet of white lilies. David stood beside Naomi, his hand steady on her shoulder. And Naomi's children, dressed in their best, watched with pride that made their eyes shine. As Naomi raised her right hand and took the oath, the crowd erupted, from defendant to decision-maker, from silence to voice, from slap to gavel. The woman they tried to break had become the very thing they feared most: unstoppable. The story of Naomi Carter isn't just about one courtroom. It's about every room where injustice hides behind polished wood and false authority. It's about every whisper that says, "You don't belong here." Every slap, whether of a hand or of words, that tries to remind you of your place. And it's about the fire that rises when one person finally says, "Enough." Naomi didn't win because the system gave her power. She won because she claimed it, because she refused to bow her head, because she chose to rise, even when the world tried to push her down. And in rising, she gave others the courage to do the same. So now the question is not what Naomi did. It's what you will do. If you were in that courtroom, watching injustice unfold, would you stay silent? Or would you stand? Because justice doesn't live in the gavel. It lives in the people brave enough to hold it. What about you? If this happened in your workplace, your school, your neighborhood, what would you do? Tell us in the comments. And if Naomi's story moved you, share it, because someone out there needs to be reminded that they too can rise.